It's raining red.
Hey, tell us the one about the guy in the white mask.
Again?
Okay. There's this girl named Lori, a high school student, honor roll, shy around boys. She got this job, babysitting a couple kids. It was supposed to be $20 for pizza and table and long talks on the telephone with her friends who were supposed to also be babysitting. She wasn't one really to listen to a lot of radio or to turn on the news on television, so she hadn't heard about the escaped maniac from the nearby institution, the insane asylum. It was Halloween night, and she didn't know that he was coming home. You know what the Halloween series didn't need? It didn't need an elaborate mythology behind it in order to tell what is a very basic story. I do appreciate that they tried to take all the subtext of the first two films, and even part of the third, and make it into literal plot. But did they have to do it in such a clumsy, ramshackle, nonsensical way? Welcome to Halloween 6, or Halloween Curse of Michael Myers, since although everyone refers to it as Part 6, 6 doesn't actually appear in the title sequence. We had hit that point in Hollywood where they had decided that numerals in titles were a negative, that were pushing people away from going to the theater rather than inviting them in. I'm not going to debate the merits of that. All I know is there's never been a Part 6 that feels more like a Part 6 than Halloween 6. And the curse of the title isn't so much the rune curse that you might think it is. It's more like they can't make a Halloween film anymore without having to have 3 or 5 different versions of it appear. And this was the first time that had happened. Reshoots are nothing special in Hollywood, and that goes back to the beginning of Hollywood filmmaking. But never before has there been a series that takes as much tinkering to get a film from the page to the screen as this one. And it all starts right here with Halloween 6. Handed an impossible task of making sense of the small crumbs handed to it by the previous films as far as where this film should go, it decides to not just embrace all the wildest conspiracy theories that your fan film could possibly have invented, but it goes further. Now you're probably wondering, am I evaluating the producer's cut here, or the theatrical cut, or that bootleg of the producer's cut that you had that had even more footage than the eventual home video release? I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. The movie is disjointed and weird, and a lot of its fans talk about its atmosphere. I'm not sure I agree that it has a lot of atmosphere. I'm not sure it feels like the films that came before it. What it feels like is a lot of studio interference. And that's never good for creating mood, atmosphere, or especially a thematic underbelly that we can really relate to. It's a film in which characters we're supposed to relate to are just so obnoxious or off-putting that we want them dead. But we can't really root for Michael Myers either because he's, intent on killing an infant. It seems to have taken the idea that a high school girl like Lori was no longer a vulnerable enough victim. After all, then we went down to having a 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever Jamie's supposed to be in 4 and 5. Yeah, a little girl is the threat. Well, this film decides, let's have the little girl's baby be the one who's at risk. You can feel the entire production just searching for a way to up the ante. And they up the ante in every single way. Not that any of it really plays. The idea of having a cult surrounding Michael Myers is completely at odds with everything we've seen before and contradicts all the logic of the first, second, fourth, and fifth films. The idea that Dr. Wynn had masterminded Michael's escape and his murder sprees and was protecting him. Where did this come from, and what are we really supposed to make of it? Is there a comment being made here about institutionalized medicine, or I don't know. The film has just scenes following scenes. What exactly is Tommy Doyle doing? I don't know. There's a lot of shots of him Googling things, really. What is Dr. Loomis doing besides suffering from some form of emphysema and looking forlorn at the camera as if he's looking back at his career saying, at some point I agreed to make all these movies, didn't I? It turns the goodwill that this series has enjoyed at most points in the preceding films and really trashes it to make a film that is at best just an odd exploitation film. And you have to wonder, did they think we were going to relate to any of these characters as more than just red shirts? Michael Myers being stopped by runestones and piles of rocks on the floor isn't probably the worst idea for a different film, right? The Michael Myers we have would have kicked the stones out of the way and kept walking. But in this film, he's suddenly playing by different rules. And you could say, well, he's never confronted any of this before. Well, and that's kind of the problem, is you can feel just a mythology being invented wholesale to tell this story. I could live with that, just like the fifth film changed things up just completely, if there was any sort of storytelling going on under the surface. But that's not what's happening. All we have is story. Michael Myers chases this character, now chases that character. He's after the baby. Does this sound a lot like Jason Goes to Hell to you? I mean, all the same criticisms are really at play. The difference is Jason Goes to Hell is really an inoffensive film because it's so lighthearted and goofy. This film has this deep, dark sensibility, but nothing really plays. And do we really have to have characters like that DJ that's supposed to be Howard Stern? Oh my God. I don't want to watch a single moment of anything like that on film. Halloween 6 has enjoyed some popularity among certain fans. And I think it has to do with the more obvious exploitation elements that are in the film. Michael Myers, by this point, has just completed his Jasonification. And he's no longer really the Michael Myers character from the other films at all. And I suppose there's something to be said for that. They made this movie, and if you like this movie, that's great. But it is so far afield of the first two films in particular that it's difficult to even imagine who the audience was for this. Unsurprisingly, it didn't really find its audience. Now in this series, I usually talk about what things mean and how social events are being used to tell the story on a deeper level. There's simply none of that in this movie, so I'm kind of at a loss to how I go about that. What I can say is, it's not the worst of the series. Against all odds, it's not even the second or third worst of the series, in my opinion. But it represented a moment where there was no going back. You kind of knew the best that they're ever going to do from this point on is kind of make you remember the first film and get all tingly because an image or an idea or a performance evoked an earlier film. But from this point on, nothing new would come out that ever really worked. Now, there are definitely fans that embrace this film with both arms. That's fine. I feel like that they're embracing a film that's not a Halloween film. It's something else that they're looking at. And nostalgia is a hell of a drug. It definitely can make you love things that you've just seen a lot. For myself, I've always found this to be a troubling, messy, incomplete film that no matter which version you watch, leaves you kind of cold. I wish there was a character somewhere in here that I really like, but I can't even name them, and I'm not going to do the research. Michael Myers is really not Michael Myers anymore. Dr. Loomis is a shadow of himself, and has nothing to do in this movie, by the way. All the tertiary characters, the secondary characters, are all kind of cliches or just stock characters. None of the performances seem particularly invested, and ultimately, you get a film that the best you can talk about is its running time. It's a full-length movie. And it came at a time when slashers were in short supply. Maybe that also plays in this film's favor as far as its reputation. Around its release, there wasn't much like it. I think there might be a reason for that, though. The slasher film was never meant to be the center of the horror film universe for a reason. There's only so much you can do before you're so far from the original concept that it's even tough to call it a slasher film properly, or it just becomes repetition. The same basic structure, just repeated with new actors and new characters. For myself, 6 represents the end of the classic Halloween series. Now, there would be a course correction with the next film, but it comes at a price. But after H2O, you're going to discover that I don't have much nice to say. You're probably thinking, he didn't have much nice to say about this. And that's true. But I'll take Curse of Michael Myers over much of what is about to come.